Buddhism is a religion and philosophy that developed from the teachings of Buddha and arose in northeastern India between the late 6th and early 4th century BCE. It is made up of three cornerstones called the Three Jewels, which are Buddha, the teacher, Dharma, the teachings, and Sangha, the monastic community. Some beliefs that you should know about Buddhism are karma, which is the law of the cause and effect of actions. Good conduct brings a happy result, while bad conduct brings an evil result. The Four Noble Truths, which are that there's suffering in the world, desire causes suffering, suffering can be ended by desire, and the way to end suffering is through the Eightfold Path. The Eightfold Path is a way to overcome misery. Some examples of it is having right views and right aspirations. Another belief is nirvana. The aim of Buddhist practice is to be rid of the delusion of ego and free oneself from the chains of the world. It's the ultimate goal of Buddhists. Buddha was a wealthy prince who lived a life of luxury, and he was protected from the exposure to the ills of the world. When he was 29, he first observed suffering of the world and renounced his wealth to live a life of fasting. He realized this wasn't the way to understand suffering. So he sat under a tree and received enlightenment, which is associated with understanding the Four Noble Truths. It's difficult to make generalizations about Buddhist leadership structures because they vary from region to region and from sect to sect, but there's a couple generalizations to be made. There's typically an individual in charge of a Buddhist institution, but there are also others in charge of other significant responsibilities. For example, in Japanese Zen temples, the spiritual head is responsible for teaching novices, but there's also a head monk who's in charge of running the practical parts of the institution. Our group did a virtual reality tour of a Chinese Buddhist monastery. When you arrive, there's a front gate with a screen wall that blocks bad influences from entering the temple. Throughout the monastery, you'll find stone-lined guards that protect the physical structure of the buildings as well as the people. The architecture of temples in the monastery resembles that of houses and government buildings in traditional China. At some Chinese temples, you can find an octagonal pavilion. The number 8 is considered favorable in Chinese culture. Temple courtyards often include incense burners because presenting incense is one of the most basic acts in Chinese religion. There's multiple halls in this monastery for deities of Chinese Buddhism. One hall I found interesting is called the Putong Pagoda, where remains of monks are laid to rest.
The daily life of a monk mainly consists of an early wake-up at around 5 or 6 in the morning. The younger monks will further their education on the faith throughout the day by practicing their exercises or learning more about the spiritual aspects of their lives. The older monks will either be educating the younger ones or assisting with social work outside of the temple. Part of their social work will consist of educating children, which is a central aspect to their work outside the temple. They will teach children about the importance of their spiritual aspects and how to live in a moral and just way. Furthermore, the older monks may ask for donations for the temple or assist in social projects around the community. These social projects may consist of assisting with food banks or helping with charity. The monks don't have much leisure in their lives, as the monks' lives are mainly focused on the non-material and spiritual aspects. This results in the monks meditating or doing other internal exercises such as Tai Chi throughout the day. Something that the monks try to focus on in their lives is inner peace and balance. The monks work to maintain this at all times, and they do this by trying to never show negative or outward emotion. Instead, they try and focus on their spiritual and mental parts of their lives. The clothes of a monk are also extremely important to their lives. Their clothes consist of an inner cloth, which consists of a waistcloth that wraps around their waist and down to their legs, an upper cloth, which covers the left shoulder and is the most obvious and known part of their clothing, and the outer cloth, which is used during cold weather to cover the entire body of the monk. The monks believe that this entire clothes scheme is allowing them to become closer to Buddha, as this was his original and most common form when he was meditating or doing other important things. However, the Buddhist monks used to scavenge the robes from refused dumps or cremation grounds. Instead, they use these robes to show how they rely not on themselves and their own work, but on volunteers and assistance from other people. These robes are usually donated to the monks in the temple, and they show them how the monks are not really aiming to have a materialistic life.
The three major sects of Buddhism are Mahayana, Theravada, and Vajrayana. Mahayana Buddhism originated in 1st century CE India. They believe that neither the self nor the dharmas, or cosmic law and order, exist. Their doctrine is always subject to change, making them the most lax major sect of Buddhism. They harbor an important respect for nature and its creatures. It is the largest sect of Buddhism and is largely concentrated in China, Japan, South Korea, and Vietnam. Theravada Buddhism is one of the earliest sects of Buddhism, originating from one of the original Buddhist schools. They believe in infinite cosmos that are constantly being created and destroyed. It is the second largest sect of Buddhism and is largely concentrated in Thailand, Burma, Sri Lanka, Laos, and Cambodia. Vajrayana Buddhism originated slowly through the spread of mystical Buddhist practices. They believe that knowledge is mystical rather than intellectual, meaning that knowledge is felt rather than studied and exists outside the constraints of time and space. It is the third largest sect of Buddhism and is largely concentrated in Tibet, Nepal, Bhutan, and Mongolia. All sects of Buddhism in the modern era, major or minor, respect each other. Little conflict between Buddhist sects exists past a century after the passing of Buddha. Meditation varies in execution between the different sects of Buddhism, but leads to nirvana in all of them. From the beginning of widespread Buddhism, meditation served as a medium for monks to bond both with each other and with their spiritual selves. Buddhists believe in three planes of existence: desire, materialism, and immateriality. Through meditation, monks are able to be one with the plane of immateriality. Theravada Buddhists have two main forms of meditation. The first is moral and intellectual purification through yoga. The second is the attainment of nirvana through intense concentration and grasping the fundamentals of Buddhism. Mahayana Buddhists meditate through physiological analysis because they believe that everything but one's consciousness is real. The other external aspects of a human are non-existent. Vajrayana Buddhists meditate by reflecting on the causation and effects of human suffering. They believe that this leads to basic human compassion, transcendent of selfish human emotions.
Venerable Deepam has agreed to teach me the basics of meditation.
One more.
I find it very hard to sit cross-legged. I used to do it as a child, but I've lost the ability. But all Buddhists have to be able to do it, don't they?
Yeah. If you are sitting in this posture, you can focus the feeling between your land and body.
How do you begin to concentrate, to meditate? What do you do?
A good teacher from Myanmar, from Burma, taught me a very simplest process of concentrating mind, and I really practice every day. When I shut my eyes, I try to relax my whole body. I try to stop thinking. If you focus all your mind on tip of your nose and observe the flow of air inside and outside, breathing in and out very slowly, full concentration, that is called vipassana meditation.
I enjoyed that. And actually, it's quite noisy here, but even so,
Yeah.
I found I was
Yes.
going inside myself, concentrating on the tip of my nose, even though I couldn't see it.
Buddhism has had a tumultuous history both internally and externally. The many splits in beliefs on faith, doctrine, and politics since the beginning of Buddhism led to occasional violence between different sects. Imperialism and cultural encroachment from the West caused major threats to tradition and faith in Buddhism. Despite internal and external conflict, the majority of Buddhist countries made an effort to keep the tradition and faith strong and alive. They settled for appeasement of Western nations that brought Christianity to them by adopting some of their practices while keeping the majority of their own. They adopted Sunday schools, they built worship areas, and they had many of their monks become missionaries to spread Buddhism all throughout Asia. Buddhism is a lax religion in both its practices and its toleration of other religions. The changes that the different sects have undergone only strengthen its influence globally, mainly in Asia. Toleration of all religions is the main goal of modern Buddhists.